Well, okay, so let's move into our main topic, which kind of goes hand in hand with our found footage, which is a movie that we are actually going to be ghost busting on.
This is
Yeah,
the
you
first
guys.
movie that we've all collectively not finished.
Luke, did you finish it?
Um, I got through most of it. I did skip ahead a lot, and I'll tell you why when we get into the review.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to actually talk about 2018's Antrum. For those of you who have never heard one of our previous ghost busting segments, we
Full
look
title: Antrum, the deadliest film ever made.
correct.
Right, yeah, that's the tag.
I stand corrected. But for
Much
those of
like Deathbed, the bed that eats. You always got to have the title in there.
but for those of you who don't remember our previous ghost busting episode, we did Hollywood Babylon, which was supposedly a cursed film, and we debunked that one. However, I will say, gentlemen and audience, this film was a little different. And I mean that in a, if you're looking for a film that's probably going to fuck your mind up and psyche, it's probably going to be this film here. Now, I'm not going to say they're correlated here, ladies and gentlemen, but I will say after I saw this film, I could not sleep. Not because it fucking scared me or anything, but I just had some bad insomnia that I haven't had in years. And coincidence? I don't know. You be the judge. I don't
Maybe.
like to think it's anything, maybe. But for those of you who don't know, Atrium is, of course, as Luke was saying, the deadliest film ever made. It is supposedly it has been, you know, known as a mockumentary horror film. It was directed by David Ameto and Michael Lindsay. Sorry if I butchered that. It's basically it's basically a film that is supposedly showing a lost film from the 70s and about a brother and sister trying to save their dog's soul. And so basically, they're trying to rescue their deceased dog, and so they go into the woods and they basically start doing these rituals to dig a hole to hell. So the film itself, I'll say, is very interesting. When I watched it, it definitely has this captivating. You know, you watch it and you can't stop watching it. It's like, you know, where you kind of sit there and go, it's so it like you can't, you want to know what's going on. Um, but throughout the film, they're not even subtle. There's very there's symbolic symbols, depictions of occult symbols, and they're not even being subtle about these. I mean, they come right on the screen. They're almost like cheaply scratched in on the film, and it's not even scratched. I mean, they're literally like computer
It's just,
generated.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like there for a reason.
yeah. And oh god, the film itself it's so subtle, but yet so full of symbols, and you're watching these two kids do really creepy things. Like making a pentagram, taking every single religious symbol that, you know, exists that we know of, and basically planting them out and calling upon hell to save their dog. Luke, what did you think about this film?
Well, it was a. I was really intrigued by it, but also kind of disappointed. Um,
Correct. Okay.
it's like I like the framing. I originally liked that original because the movie kind of starts with a mockumentary intro to the film. And there's a kind of a fun little effective saying like warning if you watch this
Right.
you you know you have X you know and there's even a countdown of like you need to you have X amount of time to leave and not watch this
Right.
ever again.
Yeah.
And the rest of the film is just the Belgian production in an English language movie called Antrum. And to their credit, a couple things that they get really well. One is that it feels like a 70s horror.
Yes.
It feels,
Okay.
and there's an amateurish quality to it as well. So it feels cheap.
Agreed.
Feels, um, This does feel like, presumably it might have been filmed just in like some back countryside because of very minimal sets, minimal actors. And then also, as you mentioned, the subliminal, that they pop up a lot. So it is kind of like weird in that.
Occulty.
And the sound mixing and editing really adds this on. It feels off. It always feels strange and weird.
Unnerving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in terms of like the actual tone. Well, first off, because it like the actual movie, I'm afraid just doesn't really like not a lot happens.
Correct. Yeah.
So
But you can't stop watching it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but at that same time, it just like it doesn't like it's like what else is going on besides just
Right.
this weird tone. Personally, I would have preferred it if the intro, like if the mockumentary was the real thing and we just like got chunks of the movie as we go, because that felt more compelling. It felt more interesting. The lore and the history they were building
Yeah.
behind this movie that that supposedly
Kill people.
Killed the 3 programmers who were at the film festivals all died within an hour of watching the film. There was a riot in the movie theater, and then finally a small movie theater that filmed it in Europe like entirely burned down to the ground. This is all mockumentary stuff. This is all stuff that they are making up.
Is it, Luke?
I mean,
is it?
I mean, the actors have IMDb pages now.
I know.
Yeah, right.
Like, as I'll say to their credit, again, you're watching it and you feel that weird sense of dread, like they're watching something cursed.
You shouldn't be watching.
Clips. Yeah, exactly. You shouldn't be watching, and then there are all these like moments that they pepper in, very clearly like moments of gore, what look like a straight up like serial killer's photos, cut in there.
And the reason I heard about this film too was because my girlfriend was watching American Horror Story, and they were talking about a cursed film in the movie called Rabbit Rabbit. And I did some deeper research into it, and Rabbit Rabbit is supposedly what Antrum is based off of.
Really?
So in American Horror Story, the film they're talking about, Rabbit Rabbit, is Antrum. Because they talk about how it's a cursed film that killed people who watched it, and you shouldn't watch it. And, I just kind of dug, and I found this film, and it's a found footage, and I was like, wow, this is another one of those, kind of
like
occult classics.
Like the sound editing adds to that to kind of like make everything feel dread. The overall film, like again, once you get past the 3rd or 4th symbol or like spliced screen of something in the film, it like it's like, okay, subliminal messaging, blah 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 blah. So it's hard. I really like the idea behind the film. I just don't think they did enough with the actual premise of the film.
It's interesting because they also apparently researched real occult symbols to put it into this film.
To put in the film, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of work that was done into it. I'll give definitely credit to that. And again, the amount of work they also made it to look like a 70s film.
I'll just send it out to them now. If you guys wanted to go all out, you should have just sent it to somewhere in Africa so they could have done some kind of blood sacrifice for you here. And and then you'd really have a cursed film if it was like, oh yeah, some child was sacrificed upon the reel of this movie.
Yeah.
Right, or something along those lines. It's not really a joke. I kind of feel like Luke is right on that. I didn't finish this film because again, it was just something about the film. I felt like it was made specifically for just the unnerving parts rather than an actual
especially if you're spiritual.
Yeah, and and I went in watching it with no attachment to really anything because it's a film, right? So I'm like, it's a film, whatever. We've seen a bunch of stuff, but I don't know. Just like what Luke said, like when they show shots of like the gore without spoiling anything, that, like, I don't know why, but that, like, got to me for some reason. Like, why did that need to be in there? That felt like it was actual screenshots from a police department that they're like, can we borrow this to put in our film? Just
Yeah, definitely.
make the audience seem like this is real because that photo that you saw, or this is real because how it was, like, the graininess of the shot, and then, like, it jumps to another scene, and here's this shot of, like, the ground, and you see, like, Robin saying, like, she's placing stuff there. Something about it was very unnerving on that point, but I felt like that was their ace in the hole. Like, they weren't really trying anything with it, because the whole premise of their dog being resurrected, you know what I mean, for safety, like, why did that need to happen?
Yeah. And the intro, and in the intro, like, mockumentary section, I remember there's a line about how the only print, the idea is you are watching this singular print they had found, and they know that, like, that there have been cuts and edits to the film, probably, like, post production, like after the film had been made, somebody had tampered with it in a certain way. And again, all of that stuff was the most interesting part, like the mystery of what Antrum was and trying to figure out, like, who was behind it. I would say that's another thing that felt like it was kind of a glaring omission of, like, who made the film. I think that, like, I mean, obviously it's a horror film, so you can be like, oh, we don't know, and all of the actors are dead, and blah blah blah. But I think at least, like, let's at least have that narrative through line. Let's, like, let's find out the mystery of what's going on with Antrum.
Here's a mystery for you.
Footage.
Here's a mystery for you. So this film came out in 2018, correct? And it's about these children trying to resurrect their dog by, basically digging him out of hell. And Mr. Pickles, which is a show about a satanic dog, came out in 2013.
Mr. Pickles.
You've never seen Mr. Pickles, Luke?
I've never seen Mr. Pickles.
Okay, Mr. Pickles is one of those shows I will also tell you I'm very uncomfortable watching at times because it's so satanic with symbolism. Look up Mr. Pickles. I mean, it's pretty insane. It wasn't on Adult Swim for a long time, but it's basically about a little dog that is Satan incarnated, and, like, there's just so much, like. It kind of reminds me of Antrum a little bit, just, like, really going over the top to really try to get you that shock and awe, and that's what I don't know why that just kind of popped in my head. Coincidence, Steve? I don't know. Maybe
Maybe
Antrum made me think of Mr. Pickles.
Right out of every show possible, Mr. Pickles comes to mind.
Well, don't you think that's kind of interesting? I mean, Mr. Pickles is kind of like about a satanic dog. I'm just saying.
Yeah. But I get your thing, because from what I remember of Mr. Pickles, it was very, very shock value of, like, the things that because would you call it gore though, Rob? Like, how
No,
they were doing
but
it?
literally the dog was, like, raping old men and having, like, he would be, like, sodomizing people, or, like, bears would come up to him and he would just start sodomizing the bear and, like, tear them in half because he'd be like, oh no no no, and doing, like, his demonic talk to them, and they'd be like, yeah, it was a very I have to say no sir, I don't like it. Didn't like it at all. I think it was a very interesting show. But let's get back to Antrum, though. On what would you guys score Antrum? Now, it is a found footage film. What would you guys? And that doesn't really, And the reason I say that is because, as we were discussing earlier in the previous program, it's been so oversaturated. So it's so kind of hard to even, like, if this film film came out before Blair Witch, this film would be freaking the fuck out of people. Let me tell you, if this film came up right then, I think just in general. I mean, what do you guys do? You guys agree with me on that one?
Yeah. I think another thing to remember is that, like, technically when we say found footage, the core of the movie is just a replication of a 1970s horror film.
Correct.
Just with some, editing and audio production to kind of give it a weirder to make it feel that something else is going on. But it really doesn't do anything beyond that, beyond the subliminal messages and the weird audio. Um, Again, the movie it starts with a intro so that it frames the device, like they talk about the movie, and then
like
just
Cannibal
shows.
Holocaust.
Yeah, and then, yeah, exactly, and it shows the film in its entirety, and then the end credits do a little bit more at the end, basically like saying that this is the audio uses these are real scientific concepts, that they're frequencies that can induce paranoia and anxiety. And so it's possible that this film is trying to induce certain emotional responses simply based off the audio frequencies.
So what would you give that film, Luke?
I would say that it's a 7 out of 10 premise, but with a 5 out. I would say a 6 out of 10, because I think I think the attempt to make it feel like a cursed movie, and again the work that was done to make it just feel like a 70s horror film, like a 70s B horror film, that stuff's all impressive. But at the end of the day, the actual core of the film is really bare bones and really dry and not all that compelling.
6 out of 10, so?
I would say 6 out of 10. And
I'd
again,
actually give it that too.
yeah, I would say that I would have really preferred it to be a mockumentary about a fictional horror film, like that that kills people.
Yeah, like The Ring.
Exactly, like if you did a mockumentary about dealing with something called The Ring, because then you could, because again, I would think with the mockumentary, I don't know if some of those people were, some of the consultants were actors, or if they were just people like that are in on it. But I think that would have been a better framing to blur the lines between like what would be fictional and what's not. Even though, again, at the end of the day, totally fictional.
And once again, my audience, if there was such a film that it really existed, we would watch it. I'd make the crew watch it for you. If there was a film like The Ring, I would make these guys watch it. 7 days if we had, just so we could review it to you. I would make
the review out in 7 days.
I would make that sacrifice of the crew for you, my audience, just so you could have that review of that film. But yeah, I would actually give it a 6 out of 10 too. I think that's a very good score of it. Steve, what would you give it?
I think I'm gonna just give it maybe a 5.5 to a 5, maybe. Just because, like I said, I didn't finish it. I do like going back on your point. I kind of feel like now this film gained popularity, believe it or not, through TikTok. So
yeah,
it was a trend. So I feel like that's the future kind of for this genre, because dude, like nobody's got a big camcorder anymore. You know what I mean? Everybody's got like a phone or something like that. So films like this are only gonna be passed through the pop culture and communities and stuff like that through social media. So it gained traction that way, and I feel like that's what's going to happen probably in the future. But how can it continue? Just like Luke was saying, something was missing in this film, and that's why I'm giving it a 5, just because of that factor, I should say, because the I don't know, man, like the gore and everything was fine. It's just like, but why do I need to watch this film? You know what I mean? Like, what purpose is serving? If I wanted to go see a good found footage film, go to Hannibal Holocaust, go to the great ones, Blair Witch, you know what I mean? Go to the ones that started this one, rather than watch this one to be like, well, why did I felt empty just watching it, you know?
Interesting.